make our way through these slides. This is the AIA New Jersey course, Restaurant, Retail, and Commercial Business Design in a Post-Pandemic World. There are going to be 3 speakers today. Josh Zinder, AIA, is in the middle of my screen here. And myself, Bruce Turner, and Stacy Cleash will be the moderator when she joins us. John Politsky is handling the technical assistance with us for the next slide, if you can, please, Josh. The course is approved for 1 learning unit, Health, Safety, and Welfare. AI learning units earned on completion of this course will be reported to the AICS for AI members. Certificates of completion for both AI members and non-AI members are available upon request. The course is registered with the AICS for continuing professional education. As such, it does not include content that may be deemed or construed to be approved or an endorsement by the AIA of any material of construction or any method or manner of handling, using, distributing, or dealing in any material or product. Any questions related to specific materials, methods, and services will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation. Here's the course description. I'm presuming that everyone has read this in detail, but the COVID-19 pandemic has risked the public's health and safety in buildings across the U.S. and beyond. The program is intended to provide design professionals, employers, building owners, facility managers, and the public with tools and resources for reducing risk when reoccupying buildings during pandemics and developing safer buildings in the future. We, the panelists, are award-winning registered architects specializing in various designs of these types of projects. We will share strategies based upon emerging science, infectious disease transmission data, epidemiological models, and research. The program content will be provided to process strategies for protecting the health and safety of the public while resuming these services.
John, I think Stacy's in the chat, so she's trying to get connected.
Okay. Next slide. Here are the learning objectives, holistic health considerations, recommendations for accommodating physical and strategies for reducing the spread of pathogens, in short. And I'm moving through these quickly because I know we've got a lot of slides, so. Josh, why don't I let you say a little bit about yourself? This is your bio. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Joshua Zinder. I'm going to run Joshua Zinder Architecture and Design. I have more than 20 years experience in the profession, coming on 30 now. It's got to be updated. We have worked on restaurants, 4- or 5-star restaurants for acclaimed chefs around the world. We've worked on high-end retail design, clothing, jewelry, gift shop boutiques, cafes, fast casual takeout, all around the world. In 2013, I was Architect of the Year, AIA New Jersey Architect of the Year, and most recently with my partner Mark Sullivan, we collaborated to help city officials in Princeton modify the Witherspoon Street corridor for outdoor dining. And this coming year, I will be president of the AIA New Jersey.
Thanks, Josh. Stacy, are you connected, and do you have access?
Yes, Bruce, I'm here. Thank you.
So do you want to take over here with this slide?
Well, why don't you give your own summary, and then I'll take over from there.
Okay. Well, I'm a sole practitioner architect. I live and work in Vineland, New Jersey. I'm a graduate of the University of Notre Dame and licensed to practice architecture in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I founded my firm in 2000. My work has been predominantly for residential, commercial, and municipal clients. I try to emphasize personalized service and attention to detail. I have previous experience in educational, assisted living, religious, corporate, and industrial work. I was the 2017 to 19 AIA New Jersey Regional Representative to the AIA National Strategic Council, and I was moderator of that body in 2019. I was the New Jersey representative on the AI National Small Firm Exchange from 2015 to 2019, and I was a member of the AI National Center for Practice from 2017 to 2019. For a long time, from 2000 to 2016, I was president of AI South Jersey. I am a longtime and current co-chair of the AI New Jersey Public Awareness Committee. And in 2005, I was president of AI New Jersey. I was fortunate enough to win the AI New Jersey Young Architect of the Year Award in 1998 and the AI New Jersey Distinguished Service Award in 2009. I've worked in retail and restaurant work, including small local establishments for private business owners and franchisees, including hairstyling salons, a florist, sandwich shops, cafes, private restaurants, among others. And I'm currently also a construction manager and architect for the Cumberland County Improvement Authority, where I design and manage capital improvement projects for the County of Cumberland and other municipalities and counties with whom the Cumberland County Improvement Authority has shared service agreements, working on projects such as the Cumberland County Recovery Center, the Cumberland County Veterans Burial Pavilion, Rowan College of South Jersey at the Cumberland campus, and the Salem County Child Advocacy Center.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stacy Cleash. I will be our moderator today, managing the questions. Please enter your questions in the Q&A type box at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. If you have any technology problems, please enter that in the chat so that we can assist you. I am a past president of AIA New Jersey and the Architects League of Northern New Jersey. I participate in this webinar series as a representative of the Public Awareness Committee, and we have put together this series primarily to advise non-architects on changes that they may anticipate in the future due to our experience during the pandemic. And each of our programs in the series focuses on a different building sector. So we're delighted to have such a robust audience here today, and we hope that you will be joining us for our upcoming programs. Next slide. The idea behind the pandemic series was developed by the Public Awareness Committee, and it's hosting the series for developers, building owners, facility managers, operators, realtors, and users to assist them in understanding facility design changes that can be anticipated in our post-pandemic world. Each webinar will focus on a different building or business type and feature a panel of architects that are experienced and expert in that sector. To register for additional webinars in the series, you can use the link that will be included in the slideshow that you'll receive tomorrow, and also available through our social media pages. Next slide, please. And here you can see all of the programs that are in the series. Multifamily housing and healthcare design both have been completed, and we will be premiering the recordings of those videos for people to watch in the future. And the today's event, obviously you're here with us. The upcoming programs are school and daycare design, which will be on December 3rd at the same time as today's program, 12:30. And contract interior design will be on December 17th, also at 12:30. If you have other sectors that would be of interest to you, please don't hesitate to let AIA New Jersey know, as we are investigating future topics for 2021. Thank you for joining us. We are delighted to have Bruce and Josh joining us today. Both are extremely knowledgeable in the subject matter and have gone above and beyond in researching what's going on right up until the day. So the governor, of course, is making changes on a daily basis to requirements to our facilities here in New Jersey, and we are looking for solutions to make it possible for buildings to encourage their tenants and businesses that occupy those buildings to be able to function safely moving into the future. So thank you, Josh and Bruce, for being here, and let's begin.
Bruce, real quick, just a heads up on your microphone. It seems to be cutting in and out a little bit, just so that you're aware.
Okay.
So we wanted to begin with this short video that illustrates how viruses and germs can spread throughout a dining facility. This was a study that was done in Japan. It shows that buffets will not be very much long for this world. So that was just a quick look at how germs can spread over a group of people, and that was over 30 minutes time, it spread to everybody in the room, had it on their hands, on their face, and on their clothes, and it was really quite surprising. So high-end restaurants or tablecloth restaurants around the world have had to shut down their specialized cuisine and service, which is not readily transferable to a takeout experience. And their venues cost too much to run at 25% occupancy. The covers just don't cover the cost of the restaurant in this environment. The experience and Instagrammable moment that have ruled the day for the last 5 years or so in restaurant and retail design have been supplanted by touchless menus, outdoor dining, and pickup. But 4- and 5-star restaurants don't quite fit this model. You can't take that experience away in a box. Fast casual dining experiences, if they were able to weather the storm of the first few months of the closure and make it often can survive, but not can survive, but not necessarily well. They can get on the pickup and delivery or the outdoor dining model, which can improve their performance. Pizza places and similar pickup delivery locations are surviving due to outdoor dining capabilities and DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub type of accessibility. Food retail limits its occupancy and also leverages delivery and pickup models to survive. Small retail survival is controlled by occupancy, only allowing for 1 or 2 people in a store at once and creating unique perspective of the line at a jewelry store just to get in. Corporate cafes and dining experiences have been hurt from limited occupancy in their office parks as everyone has moved to remote working environments. But those that have stayed open have been able to leverage outdoor dining spaces to provide safe dining environments and at the same time reduce the staff they need to operate with. Many of these facilities are preparing for what comes next. So remote ordering from your phone or office computer or POS stations within the dining facility to limit ordering at food locations. Pickup lockers are also being incorporated, while spacious, diverse dining areas are still on the mind of property owners. HVAC systems are also being reevaluated for these spaces. In Princeton, we were able to recently help the municipality with a master plan for one of their main streets, taking over 2 lanes of parking for dining and pickup and 1 lane of traffic for pickup, converting the street into a one-way street. For some restaurants, the experience of outdoor dining has been transformative, allowing a restaurant that seats only 65 to seat well over 90 outside. And in turn has inspired them to activate the roof of an adjacent building for future outdoor dining.
What you're seeing here in this slide is meant to represent the modes of transmission of exhaled pathogens. While we're not scientists, there are three basic modes of transmission that we need to concern ourselves with. First, there's airborne, which involves exhaled breath evaporating and transmitting droplet nuclei at distance and then being inhaled. Then there are droplets, which are exhaled and travel directly to another person's mucosal surfaces, their eyes, their nose, their mouth. And then through contact, where the exhaled particles are deposited onto and contaminate the surface, which is subsequently touched by others. Next slide, please. This slide is meant to represent the difference in transmission between masked and unmasked people. In the unmasked diagram, we see ballistic droplets in blue. We see inhalable aerosols in green. We see thoracic aerosols in yellow, and then we see inhalable aerosols in red. These are all passed from the index case to the exposed contact, and the use of masks is intended to dramatically reduce this transmission. Next slide, please. This slide is meant to represent the difference in transmission of droplets when comparing close contact to a long-range airborne route. As you can see, the droplets of all sizes are transmitted through the close contact, but only airborne droplets are transmitted through the long-range route. Next slide.
I'm sure many of you have seen this diagram, but when confronted with people who put their comfort above safety, sometimes the simplest diagrams work the best. The notion that if there were two people who are naked and one person pees on the other, then the person is going to get peed on, is going to get wet. If that person had pants on, it would certainly be better, but they would still get wet. Their pants would get wet. And if both people are wearing pants, then only the person who pees will get exposed to that urine. So it's a simple diagram, but it tends to be very clear.
So what might life after COVID look like? In the upper left-hand corner, you see a particular restaurant is testing plastic shield pods to keep diners safe. I don't know about you, but to me, and I might be showing my age, this looks a little bit like the cone of silence from the television comedy sitcom Get Smart. By the way, if any of you are familiar with that and remember it, you'll remember that the cone of silence didn't really work. Regardless, temperature taking, mask wearing, dividers at workstations and eating facilities, automatic disinfection systems, vaccines, and hopefully not, but possibly even self-contained biohazard suits may be off in our future.
Outdoor dining exploded this past summer in the warm weather, and it will continue with heated towers well into the winter. There have also been approvals for plastic bubbles that can be used during the winter, which you see up here in New York City. That can be used throughout the winter, although they also need to be cleaned and sanitized between diners. QR codes and hands-free menus will also continue to expand as this outdoor dining experience does.
As we all know, anecdotally at least, malls and brick-and-mortar retail are taking a beating. Simon Property Group, the largest mall owner in the US, reports a 73% drop in annual earnings. They posted $145.9 million in income during the third quarter of the year, as compared to $544.3 million for the same period last year. Closer to home for me, and some of my South Jersey colleagues may be familiar with this, Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust, or PREIT, reports that core mall traffic at comparable properties is approximately 68% of 2019 non-holiday averages. Cash collections from April through October were 74% of the billings for those months. Deferral agreements have been reached with 79% of PREIT's key national tenants. And in continuous support of its tenants, PREIT has developed and implemented its own contactless pickup solution and developed a branded parking lot activation series. Now, I don't have a slide for this, but I'd like to expand on this point just a little bit, because as I was doing research on this, I read a little something from Deloitte, where they offer the following opinion regarding the COVID-19 retail environment. They go on and they say, if we've learned anything from previous recessions, is that they expose existing weaknesses, accelerate emerging trends, and force organizations to make structural changes faster than they had planned. This is particularly true in retail. During the Great Recession of 2008-2009, e-commerce grew and brick-and-mortar retail declined. As the economic recovery took hold, that trend continued while off-price discount and emerging players succeeded by appealing to new consumer demands. They went on to say, we expect a similar pattern to follow, albeit for new trends shaped by pandemic-driven global recession. Of course, certain truths remain. Retailers struggling before COVID-19 will likely see their declines accelerate. Income disparities will drive continuing business toward off-brand and discount retailers, and online shopping will continue to accelerate. But they also see other potential trends shaping the COVID-19 era retail environment. First, product mix will likely change, with retailers will need to forge new partnerships to thrive. Consumer retailer interactions will be defined by health and safety expectations. Demands for convenience will drive even more contactless transactions, and retailers will depend meaningfully on the trust they have with customers and other stakeholders. They conclude by saying what is clear, retail orthodoxies will be changed, and the industry will likely look much different than when we entered this crisis. For now, the picture may appear bleak, but retailers who grasp the challenge and join the gathering trends could well emerge stronger and provide a brighter future for employees, customers, and stakeholders alike. Next slide, please. So in the restaurant environment, this slide from McKinley & Company shows the relative impact on restaurants in densely populated states as opposed to less populous states. You see that on the right side of this slide. And the impact of the pandemic on different restaurant types and subcategories. Josh mentioned this a little bit earlier, but as you can see and as you imagine, fine dining is being impacted far more, while carry-out and fast casual are being impacted less. For instance, drive-up and carry-out, I can tell you from personal experience that the drive-up and carry-out at my local Chick-fil-A is always packed, and what they've done with their drive-through actually creates many challenges in the way queuing happens outside the building. So they've affected one issue and they've created another. So it's very interesting to see this occurring, and we can see it in many different avenues. Next slide, please. But COVID fatigue is a real issue, and people are desperate for a night out. They're looking for anything they can do to rationalize their behavior and to mitigate their risk as they get out. Next slide, please. So when they do go out and when they venture out, we can assess the risk levels of customers and the employees throughout the customer experience. This slide will show you how that scoring system to assess these risk levels can work. So for instance, we see that this tracks the customer from their entrance to where they're waiting in line at a kiosk to place their order, when they're placing their order at the kiosk, when they're waiting for that order, when the employee calls the order number and hands that order to the customer, and then when the customer leaves. So you can see the relative risk at each one of those, but this is an exercise that can be gone through for any a retail or restaurant transaction where we're dealing with the customer experience. Next slide.
Villa Savoy, which is the iconic Le Corbusier building residence that we know, was completed in 1928 and was greatly influenced by the 1919 Spanish flu. Outdoor space was a leading concept in the design, and the sink at the entry were impacts of that pandemic. Healthy and clean life was very important, and those ideas were incorporated into this design. It'll be interesting to see how those type of things get integrated into the next generation of design as we move forward. The sink from Villa Savoy I'm sure you'll be seeing pop up in lobbies of restaurants, and in a similar way, you can see them already popping up in wash stations that are in casinos around the country, and maybe even in residences. People's homes will have sinks in their entries once again.
Okay, this slide is taken from the National Restaurant Association. It's COVID-19 Safe Operating Guide. As we know, the question of air circulation and aerosol transmission of the virus is still being studied. And while the issue is yet to be settled, ASHRAE recommends every restaurant follow the following steps to maintain good restaurant ventilation. I'll make a special point to point out at the very bottom of this slide. All of these things, when you look at each one of these 8 things, are very standard practices that anyone should employ relative to maintaining their systems. But as it says in the very last sentence, no additional control will be effective if the steps above are not followed. So to me, this gets down to fundamentals. Take care of the fundamentals first, and then once we do that, we'll lay the groundwork to be able to take the next steps. Next slide, please.
Over the last couple of months, we've had clients who have added HEPA filters to their existing HVAC systems with less than success. The intent of increasing the filtration of viruses and bacteria was an attempt to protect the health of their employees and their staff. In the process, the increased resistance that the HEPA filters present in the airflow ended up burning out those units. So this is something you need to be very careful about. You need to make sure that any filtration system you add to your existing HVAC is clearly designed for that system, or the system is modified in order to account for the modification in airflow.
Before I start on this slide, I'll expand a little bit on what Josh just offered. There's also one of the recommendations is to consider bypassing your energy recovery systems in your HVAC systems. But as you explore that and as you consider it, I think the idea of that Josh was just talking about with the filter is that when they talk about bypassing the energy recovery system, they recommend and they strongly suggest that you talk to an expert about it, because at the end of the day, these systems are very specialized, and we have to be very careful that we know what we're doing with them, that we don't just try something and then reap the problems that come along with it afterwards. So I think that is one of the fundamentals here, that regardless of what it is that we do, that we talk to the experts, but we also have to understand that the experts don't necessarily know either. When I was speaking with one of my HVAC experts about things of this nature, one of the first things they did was they took the liability position, and they said, well, you know, I'm not a virologist and things haven't been codified yet, but, and then they went on and then they started talking. So we need to be very aware of that as the situation and the circumstance that we're all dealing with in this environment. So getting back on track here, okay, with the slides. This slide is ultraviolet germicidal irradiation. Ultraviolet germicidal irradiation is provided by UVC radiation lamps that are applied when applied at proper wattage and installed downstream of the cooling coils. The radiation, UVC radiation, is a known disinfectant for air, water, and non-porous surfaces. It has been shown to destroy the outer protein coating of other SARS coronavirus, and it's being studied for its impact on COVID-19. But UVC only works if it is directly exposed to the virus. Therefore, contaminants such as soil, dust, and bodily fluids will affect its efficacy. So if you remember back to the slide at the beginning where we talked about the droplet nuclei and that being carried through airborne transmission, the issue is, you know, whether or not those droplet nuclei and those droplets, whether or not they become contaminated. Because if they're contaminated, that contamination could defeat the UVC. But Regardless of that, UVC radiation is commonly used inside of the air ducts to disinfect the air, because it's worth noting that there have been reports of skin and eye burns resulting from the improper installation of UVC lamps. Next slide, please. This slide talks about bipolar ionization devices, which create millions of positive and negative ions. When released into the airway, this is a proven method of destroying viruses. Ionizers install in the ductwork, in the supply air ductwork of an air handler. How do they work? First, the positive and negative ions generated by the device get released whenever air is flowing through the ductwork. The ions then form a cluster around harmful viruses, molds, and bacteria. They then trigger oxidation in the particle cells, causing a breakdown of gases. While the coronavirus itself is too small to get trapped by most filtration systems, charged clusters of clumped particles are easier for filters to catch and remove from the air. The result is cleaner, healthier environment with less risk of infectious outbreaks. As an added benefit, ionization also eliminates volatile organic compounds and neutralizes odors. Next slide, please. This is an example of a UV ozone COVID-19 mitigation system. It's portable and compact and powerful enough to sanitize large areas. It combines the best disinfection capabilities of UV and ozone, but at high concentration, ozone is toxic to humans and animals. It can also bleach materials through oxidation and promote corrosion in elements like metals that are subject to oxidation. Therefore, people should not be in proximity to areas being treated using something such as the sterile bright equipment without proper respiratory protection, like ozone neutralizing breathers. And in a treated area should remain vacant until ozone is sufficiently dissipated, either with time or by venting. And ventilation should use negative pressurization to avoid recontamination. Next slide, please. This is an example of a portable disinfecting filtration system. They're being developed to be deployed in occupied spaces and to capture and inactivate ultrafine particles, including mold, bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Next slide, please. As we talked about earlier in the program, and as we all know, things are rapidly and continuously changing. On November 10th, Governor Murphy signed Executive Order number 194, which we have an outline of the most salient points from. This measure includes restrictions on seating and hours for restaurants, bars, clubs, and lounges, and the prohibition of interstate indoor K-12 youth sports. We should all keep abreast of any additional changes, as we are in a constant state of flux with this type of regulation. Next slide, please. So, best practices for retail food establishments during the COVID-19 pandemic. This food safety checklist. The FDA is providing this checklist for previously closed retail food establishments or for those who have been opened with limited service. The checklist addresses key food safety practices for retail food establishments to consider as they return to on-premises dining. The list addresses key considerations for how foods offered can be safely handled and delivered to the public. It's not a comprehensive list, and you should refer to the FDA, the CDC, EPA, and OSHA for additional information and content about this.
Thank you. Stacy, are there questions? We went through that very quickly. You're muted, Stacy.
We don't have any questions yet. So I want to say that I'm pretty interested to see the variety of potential solutions that may be rolling out. And of course, it's going to vary depending on the size of the facility and the type of clientele that they're accustomed to. But it does look like there are a lot of possibilities for people to at least make it through this immediately upcoming cold season. And I anticipate, because of the vaccine becoming available, that we may have a different climate in the spring. But it's very telling that this experience that America has gone through this year is going to create a permanent change in the way things operate. So while we may be looking for short-term solutions to accommodate our need immediately, we do see that these are going to make long-term changes. In particular, a lot of the technologies that you shared today indicate that we'll be incorporating those into new designs. Our first question here is from Miriam Cantamelli. What are the cost ranges of the air cleaning equipment shown on the slides?
Well, that's one of the biggest challenges, especially for restaurants and retail spaces. These systems are typically used in hospitals and other areas that are high risk, and their mechanical systems, typically have higher budgets than food venues, and there really is no study, or evidence shown in putting these systems in food venues or retail, that they will improve the situation. Mechanical systems often, are an expensive element in retail and restaurants, and these systems can get cost prohibitive for these type of spaces.
I think it's also worth pointing out, Miriam, that the slide where I mentioned that that there are some basic fundamentals that should be employed before doing anything else. I think that is a very important statement, because at the end of the day, if we don't do those things, none of the other things will work. And you'll recall that the other thing that goes along with that is the concern by the experts that this is a constantly moving target, that things have not been codified yet, a standard of care has not been established, and that it's very difficult for people to have specific measurable metrics by which we can make the decisions about the efficacy of these different things. So the cost certainly is something that has to be explored on an individual case-by-case basis, but there are things that we can do before that, leading up to it, to try to improve the situation. And I think it's that incrementalism that might be effective for many people who might not be able to afford and use these highly sophisticated systems.
Thank you. A question from Paul Tajlov. Does COVID still live on surfaces, or are people only concerned about air transfer?
It does survive on surfaces, depending on, for different periods of time, depending on what those surfaces are. Certainly if somebody's standing at a counter and they have COVID and their sweat and their droplets, from the diagram that Bruce showed, get on that counter and you walk right up to it right afterwards and get that on your hands, and then in turn have your hands touch your face, get into your mucous and nasal passageways, then that's going to transfer those viruses. Now, if you're washing your hands and if you're disinfecting before and after touching that counter, that's going to vastly reduce the chance of you passing on that virus or getting that virus.
Thank you. Any other questions from our audience today? Yes, from Chris Doherty. What kind of approach is being done relative to water flow and sanitary design? Although it looks like it's an airborne pathogen, there does seem to be a correlation with waterborne spread.
Bruce, do you know that one?
Well, it is interesting because while we did focus on the airborne and the contact, there certainly was some literature and some conversation about that. Certainly not as much evidence or conversations or discussions about it, but it certainly is an element that needs to be taken into consideration. So I don't have a good answer for you on the exact implications, but I can tell you that that has been part of the conversation.
I do know that there are some facilities, for example, Syracuse University was tracking through their sewer system, through the waste system, which buildings on their campus had been exposed to COVID-19 because they could detect it in their sewer systems. I don't know what kind of implications that had for them operationally, but it allowed them to at least track and potentially quarantine areas and buildings.
Thank you. A question from Dennis Link. Have there been any real findings on commercial grade air filter systems similar to Fellows commercial air purifiers, which is Aramax with a HEPA filter setup? I was asked by a client about these HEPA filter systems, but I worry about the liability without solid research backing them up.
I mean, the challenge, I think, is that it's the HEPA filter in these environments. Certainly HEPA filters are used in clean room environments and in hospital environments and have been used in those environments for many years. You know, those facilities tend to have high maintenance demand and often have engineers on staff who maintain those systems. Whether or not, you know, these are effective in retail or commercial spaces, there hasn't been any study that I've seen so far. I don't know about you, Bruce.
Well, and that was one of the points that I was trying to make as I was walking through those, is that the research and the metrics for evidence-based design just is not there yet. You know, this is all emerging technologies, and we have to understand that. Now, when we were preparing this presentation and we saw the total number of slides, we moved very briskly through that because we were all very concerned that we would get to the end of this presentation and we wouldn't have enough time for everything. But if you were to look a little bit more carefully at some of those slides, you'll see that they actually include micron sizes for the particulates in each one of them, and they give you the opportunity to be able to consider you know, what the impact of that would be on the design, and what the impact of that would be on potential filtration. And when we were talking about the combined use, you know, we were talking about the way that contaminants, when we were doing the bipolar ionization system, we were talking about the way that the contaminants could be a problem in that system, and that, you know, the ionization system overcomes that. And Josh, I think you were talking about what the airlines are doing when we were having some of our pre-conversations.
Yeah, so the airlines use ionization systems in their planes, and are supposed to clean and replace the filtration systems at the end of every flight. And for years, I mean, I'm supposed to probably deny it, but the article that I read said for years, you know, they may or may not have been doing that, but since COVID, they have been following best practices. And as a result, you know, if you're on a plane these days and you sit next to somebody who has COVID, you know, there's a chance of you getting it. But if you're, you know, a seat or two away, it's extremely unlikely because of the filtration system. The way the filtration system works, it ends up capturing the contaminants and the viruses.
Thank you. Next question from Paul Tajlov. What is the architect's liability in making any recommendation?
Well, certainly not a lawyer, but I think you know, any recommendation comes with, you know, you recommending anything on your projects. You know, the critical thing is that you do the research and be prepared to defend what your recommendation is. I mean, that's, and of course, you know, make sure that it's compliant with current codes and ordinances and state regulations.
And I think, you know, again, a lot of this has not been codified yet. So, you know, what code is going to say is going to be one I've been doing a lot of deep thinking about the standard of care, because the standard of care, as we all know, is what another architect in your area would be doing. And I think that we need to think very carefully about what it is that we can and should know. I think that is where the risk really lies. How well are we staying abreast of what the issues are? How well are we keeping ourselves abreast of what the authorities are sharing with us? And then how are we implementing those things? Because there's a great tendency, towards doing whatever you want, wherever you want, because you want sometimes. And sometimes you just have to spend a little bit of time and understand all those things. I know that because of my position with the Improvement Authority, I get an enormous amount of information at my disposal about what's happening in the environment, and what things are being required and what things are being done. And that puts that type of information at my fingertips. A lot of us in private practice may not have that sort of exposure, and we may have to do a little bit more research to keep up. But I think the standard of care is going to be evolving, and we're going to find out exactly what our responsibilities are. So all we can do is do our best, stay abreast of these things, and try to stay out in front of it.
I've got a two-parter that I think is from the same person, but it's an anonymous comment. So the person is saying that the system we're talking about appears to be a wall-mounted system that's merely serving a particular square foot. Is there really any science to back up its value? The air filtration system.
Well, the air filtration system unit that was shown in the presentation is really just showing what people are starting to do to look at possibilities. There is no science necessarily to back up that specific system. However, there are, UV filtration systems that can be placed within existing HVAC systems, and there are ionization systems that can be placed within existing HVAC systems. And these systems have been, and HEPA filters as well, and these systems have been used in hospital settings for years. So the challenge is that it has not been applied to a commercial use, and that's where there's not a lot of information to back it up, because we're talking about a 8-9 month period of time since this has been affected by COVID, and the retail and restaurant industries are still reeling to a certain extent. And although there are some people looking to apply these systems to their properties and to their projects, anticipating that as we come out of COVID, they will be giving their clientele greater peace of mind, and as a result, attracting people to their spaces. There is no hard science applying these really medical-based systems to commercial properties.
And I think it's also important to keep in mind that a lot of restaurants and retail outlets are in a greater facility that they don't have control over ripping out the HVAC system. They're a tenant in a larger building. So depending on how the rest of the overall facility is adapting and whether they're open or not right now, it may be critical for a tenant to identify solutions that might not be the most ideal filtration system, but it at least can have some benefit on people who are occupying the space. So yes, these are very early releases of products that have not been scientifically verified yet, but we have to identify solutions that work for a variety of users, whether they're a tenant user or the facility manager. So I think identifying possibilities and further investigating, and the architect is in a great role to take a look at systems across sectors. So somebody who is a strip mall developer might not be aware of what's going on in other industries. And so Josh's recommendations based on what the airlines are doing and what the medical facilities are doing could be adaptable into other sectors, and those developers might not have any experience in those venues. So I think it's a great opportunity for architects to be able to share information and opportunities that may cross over from sector to sector.
I'll
Yeah.
build off that a little bit, Stacy, because you know, in my introduction, I gave a little bit of background of some of the things I've been doing for the past few years, and particularly in the studies I did with the Strategic Council, a lot of them were involving business models. And the architectural business model, one of the things that we have to constantly remind ourselves of, and this came out in the Deloitte quote that I shared with all of you as we were going through this presentation. A business model is about how a company makes money and serves its client. So the demands of the client are going to be paramount in this. Okay. So at the end of the day, what is the customer? What are they going to be looking for? What are they going to want? And you know, the things that were identified by Deloitte is that they are going to be looking for health and safety expectations. They're going to want to have a trust that when they enter these establishments that they're going to be safe. And I think that becomes very important. So when we consider these things that we may want to do that aren't tested yet and that we don't have metrics for, I think we have to have very frank and open conversations with our clients and with our customers, and make sure that they understand what we do know, what we don't know, and then how we're trying to implement things that may be beneficial to them and why they may be beneficial. And then at the end of the day, they'll have to make decisions about their business model, but our business model has to be about how we serve our clients.
Thank you, Bruce. A question from Ronald Weston. Do you envision significant post-pandemic adaptive reuse and repurposing of storefront retail spaces if many brick and mortar stores and restaurants do not come back? There has been repurposing of dead malls before COVID impacts hit. Can architects lead the adaptation of Main Street?
Yeah, I mean, I would think absolutely architects should be leading this. And I think that to a certain extent, we were leading it before, you know, with retail under stress even before COVID from Amazon and other online retailers. You know, there was a shift for a lot of retailers towards, you know, the concept of EDS, in the educational space in retail, meds meaning medical. There's lots of different medical outreach that's moving into retail, and entertainment. So things that you can't get online, things that are experiential, and I think that trend from before COVID hit will continue to a, you know, probably to a greater extent, and you know, the notion of people looking for unique experiences, that Instagrammable moment, that experience that can't be purchased online. I think that'll continue, and I think people are hungry for it right now. People have been, you know, cooped up in their homes. That's why the outdoor dining experience has bloomed so much, because people are looking for that meal. They're looking just to get out and have that outdoor experience. So yeah, I think that architects should and could and should be taking the lead on creating those unique experiences and environments.
I think also that in the post-pandemic world, we saw a slowdown of Main Street, as you mentioned, Josh, and people were able to take for granted that, oh, I can just order it from my house or I can go to the store. But once we saw the lockdown, people became, you know, the option was no longer on the table. And I think it really was a wake-up call for people that if they don't frequent or at least occasionally utilize the actual visit to the facility, that could go away forever. And we've had a taste of what that might be like. So I think that might also have some impact on what we see in the future. People might not take for granted the opportunity to be able to go and shop in a store. So I don't think online shopping is going to go away, but I think people may have a greater appreciation for what's available to them and where they can go live to interact with other people and to touch the things that they're buying and make choices in real time and walk out with it. So I think people's mental relationship with these stores may also have changed as a result of what we've experienced during the pandemic. A question from Noreen Rockford. Do you have any planning examples for post-pandemic stores and retail spaces?
So we showed one space. This is 5 Wood Hollow. This space we had completed documentation of and were ready to go to construction when COVID hit, and the property owners asked us to redesign the space as a result of COVID. We originally had a large salad buffet, which is very popular in the corporate office world, and we reduced the length of the servery by about 20 feet to reduce contact points. We added the electronic POS and also connected that to people's phones and computers. And then we also incorporated a locker system. This is a basic graphic of what we're putting in, but it gives the ability so that when somebody places an order, they come down, they don't even have to go to the cash register, they don't have to talk to anybody. They can simply look at locker number 5, which is where they were told their food will be, and pick it up in locker number 5. Most of the other retail and commercial spaces we've been working on have gone on hold, sort of waiting to see what's going to come out. There are some that are still moving forward. However, they're not at the tenant level. They're still at the landlord level, and we're doing white boxes and things like that. And those owners are investigating alternative heating and cooling systems, that can, address some of the issues we've talked about. Also, some thermal scans. So when somebody walks into a space, they get automatically scanned instead of having to have somebody stick a thermometer in your space. That's another thing that we've encountered from a few of our clients.
I'm going to ask the final question. We don't have any more open questions here. I know that some municipalities have not really loved having drive-through facilities or having a lot of outdoor dining space if that is spilling out into the sidewalk area. Now a lot of those things have been relieved a little bit. I've seen some unconventional drive-through configurations, which, as Bruce mentioned, may not be ideal. But do we anticipate that municipalities might be loosening up some long-term regulations related to outdoor dining and drive-through pickup?
Well,
go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I was going to reflect that I think it's one thing to do something temporarily. I think it's another thing to do something permanently. I think people will exercise some restraint with that, and they'll want to consider those things, because it's okay to let something happen for a little while. But I think what I was reflecting on during that one slide was the fact that not everything works exactly as it should, and it gets a little bit messy out there. I talked about the experience at a drive-through with a Chick-fil-A, but even when you're walking into, a restaurant, even if they have the limited capacity, there might not be enough space in the entrance, so when people are queuing up and when people are walking in and getting their, picking up their orders or placing orders or whatever the case is, there might be an enormous amount of congestion in that part of the building because it just wasn't ever designed to be used that way. And, that creates some of the problems that come along with it. So, might these municipalities change some of these regulations? I think they may change some of them, but I think they'll exercise some caution, with what they do and not just necessarily accept everything that is being done. Josh, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance. You know, there's clearly commercial spaces want to be able to get access. They want people to be able to park and use those parking spaces in close proximity to their stores. Whether or not there's a balance that can be struck. Maybe it's something seasonal. So these end up being pop-up outdoor dining spaces seasonally, and they might come back every season. Right now there's a lot of people really enjoy the outdoor dining experience. They like the way, towns, and cities are become, pedestrian even in a shutdown like we have, and that rich experience, of dining out, adds something to the commercial landscape and adds something to the urban landscape. And I think there are a lot of people who want that to continue. But there does have to be a balance. Certainly, parking is a challenge in many communities and many cities, and that's what they're using right now for this extended outdoor space. So I think it might be seasonal. It might be a pick or choose. In Europe, some cities, shut down, driving and parking in the downtown areas every evening to allow the outdoor restaurants to open up. Maybe that's a path that we'll end up going. But I think that, it'll really depend on individual communities to make those decisions. And in some cases, they're going to be hard choices.
Thank you, Josh.
And I think that's based on climate as well. We'll see how that plays out, during the season. So
definitely, I agree with that. We did get a thank you from Kim Bunn, and I also want to extend my thanks to both of our speakers, to Josh Zinder and Bruce Turner, who've put in a lot of time in preparation in sharing this evolving solution with us. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I want to remind everyone that tomorrow you'll be receiving a survey from AIA New Jersey, or in the coming days, it might not be tomorrow. But that survey is related to today's presentation and is the last element that you need to complete in order to have your continuing education credits processed. You will be receiving 1 HSW continuing education hour for participating today. We thank you for joining us. And please do register, if you have not already, for the December 3rd program on schools and daycare in the post-pandemic world, and December 17th for contract interiors post-pandemic design. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.